All right, David, we call this segment Market Rumblings here on the fourth period, and it's where you look into our weirdo crystal ball here and try and figure out what is going to happen in the foreseeable future of the NHL. So let's start in California, begin with the San Jose Sharks, and is Erik Karlsson really their biggest trade chip right now?
Well, he certainly drew the most attention last week when their GM, Mike Grier, came out and said, we're willing to listen. We've been talking about this for the last week. I think more so than anything, this was an indication to the rest of the league that San Jose is wide open for business. And I don't believe Erik Karlsson, well, first of all, I don't believe he's going to get traded this season. I don't think there's an appetite for San Jose to retain half that $11.5 million cap hit, maybe a couple million. I just think the parameters this year with 4 years left on his deal are just a little too difficult. So Karlsson aside for the time being, they have other players that are going to generate interest from this team. And one guy in particular that I believe will be a focal point for a lot of teams moving forward and later on in the season is Timo Meier. He has, in the final year of his contract. He's going to be an RFA at the end of the season. He has arbitration rights, and yes, he's making $10 million this season, which means his QO will have to be $10 million. But you can work around that. You can find out a new contract before you submit that qualifying offer. I think he is going to be their primary trade chip this season. So that's going to be something to watch as the season progresses. They have not had any contract discussions yet with his agent, Claude Lemieux. And really, it looks like he is going to be. If this is a team that wants to free up cap space and continue their rebuild by bringing in some young assets, he's their number one trade chip right now. And he's going to be someone to take a look at later on as the season moves along.
One of my favorite sayings in the National Hockey League, especially when we do these segments and as we lead up closer to teams wanting to make their teams better, is open for business. And this team right now, the Anaheim Ducks, they are definitely that, Dave.
They are. They're last in the Western Conference right now with 5 wins so far on the season. And they have a number of different assets they can move. Specifically on the blue line, they've got guys like John Klingberg and Kevin Shattenkirk, who's on the IR right now. But these are two guys that are on expiring contracts, going to be UFAs at the end of the season. They will draw interest. They're starting to already. We've heard reports of Frank Vatrano. We know that Adam Henrique is going to be back in play for the Anaheim Ducks. And really, if you're interested in one of their veteran players, give Pat Verbeek a call. He is willing to listen. They're going to be a team. I don't think anything is imminent to this stage. Yes, we've heard the Vatrano reports. We've heard John Klingberg's name starting to creep up a little bit more. Kevin Shattenkirk, I think, is a guy that the Toronto Maple Leafs have been at least discussing internally as a potential option, among others. They want someone, a veteran presence, a sturdy, reliable guy on that back end. Probably Luke Schenn, another guy in Vancouver. Lost some interest for the Leafs. But from Anaheim's perspective, they're open for business. You're going to start to hear discussions about the Ducks starting to pick up as the weeks kind of flow here. And as we pass Thanksgiving in the U.S. later this Thursday, going into December, the Ducks are going to be a very busy team leading up to the trade deadline.
You mentioned open for business of players maybe leaving the Anaheim Ducks, but what about the Ducks and their cap space and taking on money?
Yeah, a good point. They have a ton of cap space. So this is a team that not only has assets to move, they could also be that third-party conduit that could take on a contract, likely an expiring contract, but help to free up some money for another team looking to make some additional assets. We know where they stand right now. The Ducks are not going to be, by all accounts, competing for a playoff spot this season. So if they can bring in some additional assets, get some extra draft picks, some prospects in exchange for that cap space and paying somebody off for the rest of the season, that's going to be another element to watch for Anaheim moving forward. We didn't even talk about the coach, who's on an expiring deal as well, but maybe that's for another day.
Absolutely. Over to Toronto we go. Morgan Rielly on LTIR. What's up with the Leafs?
Yeah, he's going to be out for about 6 weeks, probably not coming back until January. Now, that poses a problem because not only do they have another hole on that blue line, he's not done for the season, which is a good thing. But at the same time, LTIR means, they can accrue a little bit of space. But when he comes back, they need to have his amount of cap space in order for him to get returned to the lineup and get back in there. So it's not like they can go out there and add a Chychrun or a Klingberg at his $7 million cap hit. It's going to be difficult for the Leafs to bring in a high-priced player to this stage to help out that blue line. They've been looking for a while. I mentioned Luke Schenn earlier as another potential target. Kevin Shattenkirk is another one. Carter Soucy in Seattle if the Kraken decide to go that route. And they have other pieces as well. Vladislav Gavrikov in Columbus. So Toronto is looking at their options, but they have to monitor their cap situation and see if they can make anything work. If something does happen, it's either going to result in some players getting sent down to the A or some roster players leaving out on the back end and leaving this team.
You know, it's funny you mention LTIR and cap space and things of that nature. The Florida Panthers are going to welcome Anthony Duclair back when he's ready to return to lineup, but how are they going to make it work?
Well, I talked about the situation with Toronto, similar to Edmonton. Like, why can't you just add someone to replace Evander Kane? Well, you have to have cap space once they return. Florida does not have cap space to have Anthony Duclair come back in the lineup at some point later next month. So his $3 million cap hit has to be cleared or he can't play. So they're going to be starting, and they're starting right now, Bill Zito is, they're looking around the league to see what options are available to them in terms of freeing up some cap space. Does that mean moving out of Patrick Hornquist? And does that mean having to incentivize a team to take on his $5.4 million cap hit? Are there other avenues they can explore? I don't think they have much of an appetite to move Duclair and his $3 million cap hit. It would alleviate any pressure for the time being. But really, what this comes down to is them looking at other options and alternatives to see how they can create some additional cap space. That's going to be interesting to watch in South Florida over these next few weeks.
David, thank you very much for this. Great stuff as always. Always an interesting time, especially this week as we head into American Thanksgiving when it involves National Hockey League teams and teams that are in the upper echelon of the National Hockey League trying to get better, or teams that are maybe on the cusp. So we'll see what happens here in the next few days and weeks as we, take care of the rest of this season.